I think the dollar is going to lose a lot more value in the future than it's already lost in the past, which means the price of gold is going to go much higher. You're going to need a lot more dollars to buy an ounce of gold. In claiming that gold has no value or no use, it is objectively the most useful metal that exists. It has properties that no other metal has, and therefore it has more uses than any other metal on Earth. The only reason that gold is not used more often is because it's too scarce and too expensive. But it is certainly the most useful metal on the periodic table. And if you appreciate the properties that gold has that make it so unique and that make it so valuable and why it has been valued for thousands of years, gold objectively has value. I do believe that eventually Bitcoin will be at zero.
Gold fell the most in a week as the dollar hit a multi-month high and traders considered the outlook for the Federal Reserve's interest rate policy. In this powerful market update, economist and investor Peter Schiff highlights what many in the mainstream still refuse to admit: the dollar's strength is an illusion, and gold is beginning to expose it. As inflation data remains stubbornly high and the Federal Reserve hesitates to cut rates, gold continues pushing toward record levels, while silver quietly builds momentum underneath. Recent market reports show central banks adding to their gold reserves at the fastest pace in years, while physical silver demand keeps outpacing new mine supply. These aren't random moves, they reflect a growing global mistrust in fiat money and the financial system that supports it. The world is quietly repricing real value, and precious metals are leading the charge. For investors paying attention, this isn't noise, it's a signal. If you found this analysis valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, your guide to gold, silver, and the truth behind the markets.
I mean, Bitcoin is more than 20% below where it was 4 years ago if you price it in gold. So 4 years ago was really the top. Bitcoin marginally took out that high in 2024 after Trump won the election. We had this big spike, and Bitcoin got slightly above the price that it hit in 2021, but barely, maybe by 1%. And, now it's considerably lower. In fact, even when Bitcoin hit its nominal new record high last month, when it got above 126,000, it still was below where it was in 2021 if you priced it in gold. And, now it's in a bear market. It's, as I speak, it's still about 11.5% below the high from 3 weeks ago. I do believe that eventually Bitcoin will be at zero. But yes, I agree that it may take a long time to get there. I mean, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, there could be some people still gambling with Bitcoin. I don't know. But I think for all practical purposes, the price will be close enough to zero. In claiming that gold has no value or no use, it is objectively the most useful metal that exists. It has properties that no other metal has, and therefore it has more uses than any other metal on Earth. The only reason that gold is not used more often is because it's too scarce and too expensive. But it is certainly the most useful metal on the periodic table. And if you appreciate the properties that gold has that make it so unique and that make it so valuable and why it has been valued for thousands of years, right? It's not an accident that gold has been around for so long and has maintained its purchasing power over the centuries. It's not about just a irrational belief system. Gold objectively has value, right? You could dispute how much value, but it has value as a rare, precious metal that has properties that allow it to be utilized in so many different industries. And the fact that it's also used as money and the fact that central banks hold it as money, yes, that is yet another use for gold. But without the underlying value as a precious metal, it would have no value as money. It could not serve as a store of value if there was no underlying value that was being stored. See, that's the problem with Bitcoin. You don't store anything. You have Bitcoin, you've got nothing. Now, yes, Bitcoin has a price because somebody's dumb enough to buy it, but that doesn't mean the price is going to be there in the future because you cannot store price. You can only store value, and Bitcoin doesn't have that. But one of the reasons that I think it's still going on is the Bitcoin community has got Wall Street in on it, and now the U.S. government. So they're pushing the envelope and casting a wider net, and so they're getting more people suckered into this whole thing. So there's been new buyers to keep it going. But even Wall Street and even the Trump administration, there's a limit to how big they can make this. And we may have already reached it. I don't know. Now, if people are making that trade and buying Bitcoin, I think they're doing the wrong thing. I think they've got the right idea. They need protection from a weak dollar. I just don't think Bitcoin is going to provide it. Now, as far as the observation that, if there really was a loss of confidence in the dollar, then we would see a big drop in the dollar, not just against gold, but against the euro or the pound or the yen, and we would see it in the treasury market. Now, my answer to that is, well, first of all, there's not a lot of confidence in the pound or the euro or the yen either, right? And so investors are losing confidence in general with fiat money. And so everybody is buying gold, right? So it's not simply that people are worried about the dollar. They're worried about other currencies too. But I do believe that at some point you will start to see more pronounced dollar weakness, even against other fiat currencies. In fact, in the first half of this year, the dollar dropped about 10%, and it was off to its worst annual start in like 50 years. So that's some indication that you're seeing the confidence in the dollar erode more than in other fiat currencies. But I think that by next year, you're going to see a much weaker dollar on foreign exchange markets. And so that will be happening. Now, as far as the bond market, we've already seen that, because if you recall, the last time the Fed cut rates, and they cut rates before they started this new cycle, they cut rates by about 75 basis points, and long-term rates went in the other direction by the same amount. And very few people expected that. They thought when the Fed cut rates, bonds would rise. Instead, bonds went down. I think that was an indication of an erosion of confidence in the world, in the U.S. government's ability to repay its debts and to service its debts. So I think we've seen it in the failure of the bond market to rally. We haven't seen like a big crash in the bond market yet, but the bond market hasn't rallied the way a lot of people would have expected. And I think that's coming. So I think the people that are complacent about $4,000 gold and who think, hey, there's nothing to worry about because we haven't seen a dollar crash yet against the euro or the yen, or we haven't seen the bond market crash, those things are going to happen. But the problem is, if you wait for that, if you wait for the dollar to collapse on foreign exchange markets, if you wait for the bond market to crash, well, I mean, it's pretty much all over now, right? What are you going to do then, right? You have no time to prepare for it. You have no time to maybe adjust course and try to prevent it. It's too late, right? People should be looking at the early warning sign of the price of gold and say, wait a minute, this is a reflection of a loss of confidence. We need to act quickly before the whole thing completely implodes, which is going to happen. And the fact that nobody is heeding the warning of gold is why it's inevitable that the crisis is going to happen, because nothing is being done to try to prevent it. I would much rather take money that I would have put in Bitcoin and buy gold and silver mining stocks. I think if I'm going to gamble on something, and I look at mining stocks as more of a gamble as opposed to just physical precious metals, but if I'm going to gamble, that's what I want to put my chips. I just think the upside potential is so much greater in these mining stocks than it is in Bitcoin. I mean, could Bitcoin double from here? I suppose it could, but that's not a big enough move to even be of interest to me, compared to the fact that I think mining stocks can go up 5 times, 10 times more, even the smaller ones. On the other side, Bitcoin could collapse by over 90%. I don't think that's going to happen with mining stocks. So I think I've got less downside risk in mining stocks and a lot more realistic upside potential. Wall Street has a pretty checkered past when it comes to bubbles. They were big buyers. Those firms were big buyers of subprime mortgages at the peak. They didn't see any risk in the mortgage market leading up to the 07, 08 crisis. A lot of those big banks would have failed if it wasn't for the bailouts by the U.S. government with TARP and other programs. So Wall Street is just about making a buck, right? And so if the ducks are quacking, they're going to feed them. That's how the main Wall Street firms operate. So yes, if there's a feeding frenzy, if people want to spend money on crypto-related investments or tokens, Wall Street will make money selling those investments, managing those investments. They're making a lot of money underwriting companies, IPOs, secondaries, all these offerings in crypto-related industries. So yeah, there's a lot of money. Wall Street, they don't care what ultimately happens. As far as they're concerned, all these companies can go bankrupt. All these investors could lose money. It's like a casino operator. But a lot of people that are buying Bitcoin and other crypto, they don't realize it. In fact, they think they got a sure thing. They think they can't lose. That they're going to be in for a rude awakening. And I do think at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of lawsuits. I mean, the lawyers always win, right? And what's going to happen is a lot of Americans are going to lose a lot of money, and they're going to be looking for somebody to blame, and they're going to be looking for a way to get some of what they lost back. And that's where the lawyers are going to come in.
Every economic cycle eventually reveals the truth that paper promises can't hide forever. The current illusion of stability is already starting to crack. Inflation isn't tamed, debt is still climbing, and faith in the dollar continues to erode beneath the surface. Gold and silver aren't reacting to fear, they're responding to reality. As confidence fades, the smart money is quietly rotating back to the assets that have never defaulted real, tangible stores of value that outlast every policy mistake. We're witnessing the slow but certain unraveling of a system built on credit and speculation. When the next shock arrives, it won't create the value, it will simply reveal where it already was. Those who prepared early won't just survive the reset, they'll define what comes after it. If you want to stay informed before the headlines catch up, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, where insight, truth, and preparation meet the real story behind gold and silver.